Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Fortress with Sherry Peel Jackson. Today, we have a special guest, Mr. Larkin Rose, brilliant author, movie producer, and fellow tyranny and tax resistor. Welcome, Larkin.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Yes, I'm glad to have you on. Today, we are going to talk about Larkin's new movie. It is called Jones Plantation. And guys, I got a chance to preview the movie a little bit before it came out, and I was just floored. It was breathtaking. I was so full after watching this movie. It was deep. It had deep messages, and in between those deep messages, it also had a lot of humor and in brilliance. And so I know this has been going on for a while, but I don't go to movies. I think I've seen one movie, Hollywood movie, in the last 2 years, and because I believe that the rest of that stuff is garbage. I don't even have TV, so I don't really see movie commercials. But if there's a movie commercial that pops up while I'm watching a YouTube, I'm just shaking my head because they have an agenda, and it's always some kind of political foolishness going on. They're trying to insert their agenda and their philosophy into these movies, and I know I'm not the only one that doesn't go to the movies anymore. I just know that. So that movie was brilliant. Everybody needs to watch this movie. I will have the link to the movie in the description box. Once we finish this and I'm going to air it, I'll have that link in the description box so everybody can see it. So I'm gonna get started with the questions. First of all, tell me why you made the movie, Larkin.
Well, the general answer to that is sort of the same reason why I do almost everything I do, which is I want people to start to see aspects of reality that they don't usually think about and they don't usually notice. You know, people have their own day-to-day lives and their own things to worry about and deal with. And in the background, there's like the news and politics and whatever stuff going on. And most people even know they don't really understand anything about that, and they can say, well, I like this candidate better than that candidate, but they don't know how the machine works. They don't know how the economy works. They don't know how the currency works. And I dream of a day when people won't need to care about any of that, because we won't have a giant fraudulent parasitic violent monstrosity to have to worry about. I'd rather people be able to just focus on their day-to-day lives and stuff. But given the reality that we're in right now, there are some seriously nasty, not good things going on that I want people to know about. And so almost everything I do is trying to help basically free people from various lies and deceptions and stuff. And in this case, we're doing it by way of something that I hope is also like entertaining, like thought-provoking, but also entertaining, so that people go, wow, that was kind of amazing and also interesting and even funny in places. And but ultimately the goal is to get people to question not only what's going on around them, but their own view of things and their own beliefs, and like even themselves. I want people to even watch this and wonder, would I have fallen for that? Like, what side would I have been on if that was me there? Like, how much of this would I believe? How much would I have fallen for? So, I mean, the first goal of any movie is to entertain people, but the way more important goal to me is getting people to question things and think about aspects of real life, not just a fictional story, but aspects of real life that most people never consider, and to their own detriment. Like their own innocent ignorance is enabling really nasty people and, you know, harming decent people in the process. So unfortunately, there's bad things that I think people need to be aware of.
That's true. And there's a term, and I don't know who made it up, but it's called edutainment, which is a combination of education and entertainment. And this definitely was that education and entertainment put together. There is, just like you said, such a thing as cognitive dissonance, and it's going on all over the place. And I believe that your movie is going to break up some of this cognitive dissonance. So yes. My next question is, give us a short synopsis of the movie and what you're portraying. What are you portraying in this movie? I'm trying not to give anything away, but tell me what you're portraying.
Right. I'll try to do the tightrope walk of not do too many spoilers, but
Yeah.
still give an idea. The short version is that this happens in antebellum South on a slave plantation, and slave plantation owner is running things that, the usual brutal, nasty, horrible, evil way that slave plantations were run, but he's having trouble because some of the slaves are getting uppity and resisting and making trouble, and they're losing money, and they're not being, he's not getting the productivity that he wants. And then he hears word about basically a consultant, a slave owning consultant, who comes in and has very unorthodox, as he says, methods of improving the productivity of the plantation slaves. And so he comes in and he basically puts on a show for the slaves, which starts by telling them, "You're all free." And it goes through a number of, you get to see reality from the perspective of the slaves, who are then referred to as workers, but also what goes on behind the scenes and what they're actually trying to accomplish. So there's the play they put on for the workers to basically trick them into being more productive slaves for their masters in a whole bunch of different ways that I'm not going to give away in this interview.
Right.
But basically, it's somebody coming in to the guy who's always done it, the enslavement brute force style, and teaching them that there are ways to enslave the mind which are way, way more effective than just trying to use physical force to enslave the body. So that's sort of the encapsulation of the plot.
It sounds like 2023 to me, doesn't it? Right
Yep.
now, right here and right
Well, it got
now.
even more obvious. Yeah, it
Yeah.
got even more obvious the last few years, which ironically I think is kind of useful. Like, so many normal people who didn't pay attention to this stuff before, even they were sort of shocked out of their comfortable bubble and going, "What is going on? This
Right.
is not okay." So,
Right. This is not okay. And more and more and more and more, everybody is facing these things. And for those of us who it's not been okay with for a long time, we're saying, finally, other people are waking up. So the next question that I have, without giving away any spoilers, I don't want to give any more away that you've already talked about. You selected characters with such strategic wisdom that anybody that tries to even understand this is going to see exactly where our country is and probably where it's going. So tell me, what were you thinking about when you picked the characters?
there so many people, everybody sees reality through their own biases, their own lenses, like the things they think. They often, unfortunately, think in terms of categories of, like, here's what I think about Democrats or Republicans or religious people or atheists, and they have these general categories. I wanted to intentionally mess that up. The story follows a number of individuals, and some of them are relatable and some not so relatable, unless you're a psychopath. Because it's an examination of humanity and human nature and the human condition when put in a very nasty situation. Obviously, like, slavery is about as nasty as humanity can get, but to follow a number of individuals that people wouldn't necessarily expect to think or do certain things, and give examples of how even the decent people who mean well, and the ones who aren't sociopaths, sometimes they're brave and sometimes they're cowardly, and there's a few that are diabolically scheming. But even below the level of, full-blown psychopath, there are still people who play the game to get things themselves and do not nice things. And then there's some people who just, play the game of, well, I don't want to make waves. Like, even if I know something horrible is going on, I'm going to sort of back up and not do anything about it. And so rather than sort of just being like, I'm sure a lot of people will expect this to sort of be the cliche, slave movie of look how evil slavery is, which obviously it was, but I don't really think anybody needs to be told that now. Like, I think we all know it was really, really, really dang evil. But I wanted to demonstrate the reality of evil instead of just the comic book version. I wanted to have believable characters reacting to a situation where they're being manipulated and pitted against each other. And so I wanted to mess up the stereotype. Like the first thing that I hope people notice very on is this isn't about like the racial thing of divide of like, let's hate this group and like this group, and like that's the game that the tyrants play to make us be at war with each other. So I wanted to quickly do something that makes sure people realize this isn't that. This is an examination of, yeah, there's all the way nasty people. Then there's pretty dang nasty people who aren't, maybe they're not all the way psychopaths, but they're not being decent human beings. But then there's a bunch of normal, decent people going through kind of a horrendous situation, and not all of them shine. Even the ones who mean well, not all of them do what's right. Not all of them dare to. Not all of them dare to even know what's going on. So I want the viewer to watch and actually wonder what they would do and what they would have dared to do, what they would have fallen for, what they would have had the courage to do, when they would have been too cowardly and I'm just going to go along and not really paying attention to anything else. So I want them to be able to relate to characters, even the characters that obviously, are not role models, which is basically everybody in it except one guy is not a role model, but there's still an examination of this is how humanity is, the full spectrum of, complete psycho to just people trying to mind their own business. So I hope people find characters they can relate to and actually question themselves and wonder, would I have done any better than some of these people?
Right, exactly. I think that the characters depict things that we've gone through and things that we've seen that come out of people that you never knew that were in them, especially in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
looking for. Our next question,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think it was important to add humor and allegory to the movie?
This is a funny aspect because early on when we had an early version of the script and I was going back and forth with Andrew, the director, and he was saying, parts of this are going to be funny. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I had sort of pictured it as a drama, and given the setting, like not a very pleasant, happy drama because horrible stuff is going on. But along the way, it wandered in, which I'm really glad about. It's just not what I picture to begin with. It wandered into this sort of cult classic is the generic term for a movie that's just, it's weird enough and different enough that I think it's going to be really entertaining. And it doesn't make light of the horribleness, but there is sort of a dark comedy aspect to it that I think makes it entertaining. And the thing is, I think it's important for us to be able to, first of all, just laugh in general, like even in a world with garbage going on, if we let it drag us down and depress us and, we're just constantly bummed out and feeling hopeless, that doesn't help us. Of course, neither does closing our eyes to the whole thing and pretending it's not there. But I think we need to be able to laugh even in the face of nasty stuff. But I also think there's power in being able to laugh at those who would commit the injustice and at the games of the nasty people, because when people can get to the point they laugh at them, they're not really taking them seriously. They're not viewing them as our rightful lords and masters anymore. They're just like, you guys are kind of a joke. And yeah, you're a nasty, scary, dangerous joke that's, destroying people's lives and getting people killed and stuff. But it's still like the ability to laugh in between. And there's some really intense dramatic scenes and then some things that are out of the blue and hysterical that, there have been a couple screenings that I was at that everybody bursts out laughing.
Yes.
And it's funny because some of those, I won't get into details because it'll be spoilers, but some of those were just a matter of we were so frantic and so pressed on time that like, well, we didn't get enough to put together this scene. What are we going to do about it? So one of the funniest things where it suddenly shifts into a completely different mode, that was Andrew's idea to make up for the fact that we didn't quite have the footage for one of the things that was supposed to be there. And I
Okay.
thought it was a brilliant fix. And it's funny how often limitations and problems sort of forces a level of creativity that doesn't come out if we have all the time and money in the world. And so lots
Yeah.
of problems that we had, because this was a very, very low budget production on a very rushed schedule. But I love some of the things that sort of accidentally came out of that, and some of the things that had to be thought up. And I love the fact that it is funny in places, despite being, about such a serious thing, because also that can drag people down and make people not want to watch them. I mean, like if there's another movie about slavery, I don't really want to suffer through the evils of watching that again, unless there's something to learn
Right.
and something to like make people think. And I think this does that and manages to be entertaining. And yeah, the funny part I did not expect,
Yes, yeah.
but
Definitely
Andrew
something
saw
to
early
learn.
on that there were going to be aspects of that,
Excellent.
and
Definitely a
he was
lot to
right about
learn
that. So
and laugh
yeah.
about. Okay. The next question is um, the many profound statements and speeches in the movie described the current state of our country to a T. Where'd you come up with those statements and those speeches?
There is so much packed into this movie, and it's sort of a cumulative thing from all sorts of sources. And I've been, you've been doing this for years and years and years, and I've been doing this for years and years and years, each of us having our own part to play. And so when Andrew had the idea of taking the original little animated version of this that I did, it was like 10 minutes long. I did it like 10 or 15 years ago. But when he had the idea of making it a full-length movie, it suddenly occurred to me there is so much we can say in the context of this plot. And so there's stuff from my books, there's stuff from Frederick Douglass, there's stuff from learning what slave masters actually did, there's stuff from learning about propaganda, like Edward Bernays was into the whole, he's basically the father of propaganda and the Prussian indoctrination system. So it's sort of, the challenge wasn't finding enough stuff to make a movie. The challenge was making it less than 30 hours long. So there's so much stuff from so many different sources. And literally I think the first rough draft of the script would have been about 3 hours long. So Andrew's like, this is awesome. Also cut it down by more than an hour. It's like, okay, I'll get to it. Because there's this particular vehicle, this particular plot is so ripe with opportunities to tell so many things about the propaganda and the political system and elections and the currency and so we were thinking, just how much stuff can we get in there? So I love how much concentrated content I think we wedged in there from so many different sources. And people familiar with what I've been doing are going to recognize things. There's also a whole bunch of lines that are straight out of the propaganda we hear, that we're all in this together. There's a trust the plan. There's the I'm just doing my job from the enforcer. There's so many little tidbits in there. And I think most people, whether they're sort of already on board and on the same side, or just, normal people who don't pay any attention to this stuff, I think the first time through, they're going to get a whole lot. And the second time through, they're going to notice a bunch of things they didn't notice the first time. And I think that's going to go 3 or 4 more times before they notice all the little hints and implications, because it's more concentrated in, trying to drop little hints of and mentions of what's going on than like any movie I've ever seen. But there are so many different sources it came from, and a lot of the speeches, both speeches by the nasty characters trying to trick people and the propaganda they use, and speeches by the people recognizing something is wrong here, and here's what should be happening, and here's what we have to understand, is cobbled together from literally centuries of the battle of ideas between the people who want to be free and the people who want to dominate everybody else. And so, there's a lot to pick from in that battle, because it's been going on for all of human history. So we've wedged in as much as we possibly could into the plot.
Excellent. You guys did it. You really did a good job. It really did a good job. And I plan on purchasing the movie, also sharing it, but I definitely am looking forward to watching it again, probably towards the end of the month, so that I can absorb more, because just like you said, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that I missed in it, just because it just has so much in it that we need to absorb and we need to come to grips with. So
Yep.
the next question that I have, being that this is a financial show, how do you think watching the movie will impact someone as far as their personal financial choices are concerned?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they're investing stuff and stuff, they're just like, what's the return? Like, they don't know how the currency works or doesn't work, as the case may be. They're not bothering to pay attention to what they're investing in. It's just sort of, well, what pays back more. And, I'm not here to make people's choices for them, but I think if people sort of back up to see, what am I really supporting? What am I, whether with, investment dollars, or my compliance, or my vote, or even just the words I use and what I'm saying. And so when people are just focused on the short term, well, what gives me the most dollars? I want them to start to notice that isn't necessarily what is actually helping even you. Because if you're getting a bunch of dollars by selling your soul, that's not a good trade. There's actually a mention in there of somebody selling their soul to the devil. His response is, "Did you see what I got in return?"
Yeah.
And so I don't want decent people falling for that. And it's hard to not give stuff away without getting into details, but I want people to be more aware of the power they have through the currency they use, through what they buy, through what they invest in, because that makes a massive amount of difference to reality. People talk about voting with your wallet, where it's like, learn who the people are who are trying to do nasty things to humanity. And, while trying to, get financial prosperity for yourself, by all means, try not empowering the worst people in the world in the process. And, help your fellow man who actually deserves it, and find ways to trade that helps the decent people instead of the worst people in the world, to be a little over dramatic, but I mean, it's true. And it's something a lot of people don't even look at when they're sort of doing their financial things. They're just like, well, what has the best return and what has the best interest rates? Is like, okay, but back up and make sure you know what it is you're supporting when you're buying, when you're investing, any of that stuff.
Right, right. Like, I call it voting with your dollars and voting with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that's good.
That too.
So let me ask you, what is the takeaway that you would like for those that watch the movie? What takeaway would do you want them to get from the movie?
I want them to, like, if they walk out of the theater, or they watched it in their living room, wherever they watched it, I want them to go out in life, and I want them to see another layer of reality in the real world. And like, I hope the movie entertains them and they go, oh, that's amazing. And like, the plot and the schemes can be interesting, but I want them to accidentally notice, when they're out in the real world, how much of Jones Plantation is in the real world. That's why the tagline is, "We all live on Jones Plantation." And I want them to be thinking about it days and weeks later. And in particular, if they're watching the news, or like a political campaign, or the talking heads talking about economics or anything else, I want them to start to recognize, oh, there's Mr. Smith, and there's Mr. Jones, and there's Mr. Johnson. Now I know this game. Like, I know how this is done. I know what they're really doing. And has nothing to do with the show they're putting on. So I want people to start to break their own mental chains by recognizing the reality that's around them. And we did a lot of things in the movie that are so direct and obvious that I want almost everything people sees from the mainstream news to remind them of things in the Jones Plantation. Everything from the thumb shake that no normal human being does, but the politicians do. Little details like that. People go, why would anybody go like this when they're talking to you? And start to recognize the terminology, the vagueness, all of the political pushes for give us power so we can do these wonderful things to you. To you. That was an interesting accidental statement, but that's what it really is. So I want people to learn about the reality around them by watching a fictional story, because I want them to notice a whole lot about that wasn't really fiction. It was just sort of portrayed in allegory form, but I want them to notice a whole bunch of the tricks. It's the way I've put it on a number of occasions is a magician can do a trick and you go, wow, that's amazing. And then he shows you, here's how you do it. And you go, oh, okay. Next time he does the trick, you go, yeah, oh yeah, I know how you did that. Like that was this thing. You don't see magic anymore. You know what he actually did. I want people to watch this movie, go out in the real world and not fall for the tricks and go, yeah, we know what you're really doing. And so it's not going to work on us anymore.
Excellent.
So that's the overall goal there.
Excellent. That is excellent. So, how could anyone get involved in distributing the movie so that we can wake people up?
In the next day, I think 2 at the most. The movie will be up for anybody to buy on jonesplantationfilm.com. There will be a DVD version of it. We have this tiny little team of people, so we're putting this stuff together as fast as we can, a DVD and a Blu-ray, and Andrew and I recorded like director's commentary and stuff for that, and so people can buy the DVD and show it to people. I think one of the most powerful things that is often overlooked, because people are like, well, what major investment can I do? It's so much a matter of people, normal people, mentioning it to other normal people, just commenting places, because the concept of something going viral is now a thing because of the technology we have. And it can be like, oh, look, a cute kitten that'll go viral because everybody goes, that's so cute, I'm going to show everybody. Okay, we can use the same phenomenon for something slightly more important than a cute kitten. If we go a little bit out of our way to mention it, and as soon as enough people have seen it, I expect, and I'd love to see, under every, how the news stations and police departments and politicians, they all have their pages on Facebook and all over the place. I'd love to start to see comments referencing the Jones Plantation, like, oh yeah, we heard Mr. Jones say the same garbage too, as a way to get people to go, what are you talking about? Because I think people are sick of the discussion. They know they're all phonies. They know both sides are phonies. They don't necessarily know what to do about it. They don't really know the answer. They're just sort of thinking, well, when do we get like maybe not a phony or something? But they still don't really understand the game. So even just the thing of mentioning it and spreading it around, and especially I'm hoping that people will drop comments under all those discussions of all the talking heads who are talking about stuff that just doesn't matter. They're bickering over, puppets in the puppet show and completely ignoring the reality behind it. And so, I want people to go out, and every single campaign commercial they see, they immediately go, oh yeah, we know that game. And then start to comment and drop little mentions here and there until everybody can watch that stuff and go, yeah, we all understand the game. None of us are falling for it. You can just stop because it's not working anymore. So that's ultimately my goal. And so, yeah, people can buy the DVD and reference people, and even just dropping comments, I think, is going to be massively powerful. And getting in front of people with audiences, whether, tiny or medium or huge, because I do think it's amazing how right now the mainstream isn't the mainstream anymore. What I used to call the mainstream news, their viewership is completely dwarfed by Joe Rogan and Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore and a bunch of
Tucker.
people that, I have
Mhm.
plenty of things I disagree with them, but those are people who will talk about this. If they see this movie, they're going to go, whoa, haven't seen anything like that before.
Yes.
And so even just dropping a mention once it's available to those people to get them to do it, which, we're of course going to be trying to get their attention too.
Yeah.
But to have this become part of the public discussion and the public awareness, I think could go a very long way to having a lot more people really questioning some fundamental stuff, not just bickering about the frosting on the cake, but realizing this cake is made of poop. Maybe we need to do something else.
Exactly.
So that's my goal.
I think that, as people realize that, the magician is, his tricks aren't really real, they won't be fascinated by them anymore. They won't be confused by them anymore, and they'll start working on their own solutions to the problem. So,
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
I agree. Okay, so here's a fun part. I always ask the Financial Fortress guests to tell us something about themselves, something that's interesting or odd, like somewhere you've been that's different or interesting, something that you've done. So tell us something interesting or odd about you.
I'll start with a version that sounds really weird and bad, and then I'll have to explain it. I've lost count of the number of people that I've buried,
Really?
literally buried in the ground. But the explanation makes it a lot less creepy and terrifying than
Okay.
that. I worked on a ground screw in a little religious town, and they had their own cemetery. And so one of the things the ground screw did is we dug the graves, and after they do the ceremony, we fill them in and do all. We're like they're having the thing at the gravesite, and we're hiding around the corner with a backhoe ready to fill it in and stuff. So the short version sounds scary, but it's fun to tell me people that, yeah, I lost count of how many people I've buried. It's like, what?
Yeah, it is. It's a little
Not in a
shocking when you
scary way.
say that, because nobody really thinks about that part of it. That's great. That's great. So, give us any last parting words that you want to share with the American people and, people of the world. This movie is not just something that would resonate with people in the US, but I think this is a worldwide issue because the governments
Yeah,
worldwide are doing the same thing. So, what are your last words to tell the people?
I guess what I really hope this movie helps people to do is to know their enemy, because most people don't. Most people, like, they focus, they don't know who their enemy is. The real enemy isn't who they think it is. And there's so many divide and conquer games that the political class does, that they do it by race, they do it by religion, they do it by sex, they do it by income level, they do it by nationality and where you were born and all that stuff. That so many people, they're like, well, my enemy is the Democrats or these people or this, religious people, or, people have these categories that they're scared of, and they don't notice that almost all those categories, the vast majority of people in those categories would be willing to, like, leave you in peace and peacefully coexist with you. Like, they don't have to agree with you, but we can peacefully coexist if we don't fall for the tricks of the people who are the real enemies of humanity. And it's so sad to watch, entire races being mad at each other. Well, it's never entire races, because there's a bunch of people on both sides who are just like, yeah, no, I'm not falling for this game. I recognize that, the problem is not the color of your skin. Like, are we really not past that? But there's still people who do the group thing. And I want this movie to help them know their enemy and see through the games and realize the actual enemy needs us to be at war with each other, because we have to be mad at somebody. Like, if injustice is happening, we're not going to be okay with it. And you see this in the movie. It's directly represented where he says, like, we need them to be mad at something other than us.
Yeah.
And so they play these games, and that's one of the most just devious downright evil games is trying to pit decent people against each other. And it's so sad and frustrating how often that works on people. And I want people to who watch this movie to walk out of it, and when they see politicians and people on the news trying to play those games, go, yeah, we know that. No, we're with each other. Never mind race and religion, income level, man, woman, and all that. We recognize who the actual threat to humanity is, and it's not us. We just want to get along. We just want to live our lives. We have different viewpoints and different opinions and different lifestyles in a whole bunch of different ways, but we realize now what the actual threat is, and what the only us versus them that I care about is the us is people who would allow you to be free, and they want to be free themselves. They want to coexist with their fellow human beings. And the them that matters is the people who won't allow us, who insist on trying to control everybody else. And again, it's without us falling for the tricks and enabling and empowering these people, they don't have any power.
Right.
And the main character, who's the villain, literally explains that to the hero at one point. Like, why are they putting up with this? Why did they go along with it? Like, there's way more of them than there are of me. And yet they keep going along with it. And to me, that was one of the most intense scenes. And it's kind of depressing because it's so true.
Yes.
That we have a bunch of basically decent people at war with each other, sometimes literally at war with each other, like blowing each other up, instead of pausing long enough to go, why are we who tricked us into thinking that this was necessary? Right. This is not okay. Right. And so I really hope people will walk out of this movie and start to question really some foundational assumptions that most people have had their whole lives, and start to see a lot deeper than just, well, which of these candidates is slightly less of a crook. It's like, we need to do better than that if we want humanity to be what it should be. So
you're right.
About sums that up.
Yeah, it's sad because the trick has been going on for so long, but it's time for us to stand up. And I believe that the movie, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you learn something, you can't unlearn it. So I want it to resonate with people. I want them to discuss it for days, weeks, even years afterwards. I want little groups, would you call them watch parties and discussion groups, instead of having the book of the month, have this as the movie of the month. This is what I want to do. So I'm definitely going to get the movie. I'm going to link it to my social media and make sure that the people that I'm around, whether they be the ones that have cognitive dissonance or not, know about the movie. And I really, really appreciate you coming on today. I'm praying for the movie's success, and I know that it will be. Praying that some of these big time people, these new media, the ones that control the media now, because like you said, the lamestream media is really dead. The ones who are controlling millions of viewers, I want them to be able to see this, comment on it, and definitely you can use my review is something that when you're approaching these people, definitely give them my review. like it might make a difference, but
yeah, we love it.
So thanks so much for coming on, and I really appreciate you, and you have a wonderful week coming up.
Thank you very much. You too.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.